So, Paul, I'll let you start and then also close this, right? So it's all on you. I am your guest.
Hey guys, thank you for coming today. Just wanted to welcome all of our patrons that are joining us for this fireside chat. Since I'm joining Flexibility Marketplace, hosted by Cornet and Freelance Philippines. In case you guys don't know or need a little intro, the Cornet is a global real estate association. And WeWork is one of the largest co-working and flex space providers in the world. Just wanted to a little bit of intro on our speakers. I'd like to introduce my industry associate and friend Joey Radovan, who is Coronet Philippines chair for the second year in a row, and he's a 25-year veteran in the commercial real estate industry. Joey, thanks so much for joining us today. We're really looking forward to hearing from you and hearing your insights and knowledge and expertise in our industry. And so my name is Paul Logan. I run broker partnerships for WeWork for Southeast Asia. I've been in the commercial real estate industry for a little over 8 years, and previously started and ran Colliers International's brokerage team in Myanmar before moving over to Singapore with WeWork about a year ago. So thank you guys. I wanted to run through a little bit of housekeeping measures before we start here. If you're joining on, there are the engagement tools at the bottom of the screen. You can move everything around. You can fit your screen as you need. You can enlarge the media players, and so you can see all the panelists on here. We will be answering some questions at the end of the fireside chat. Any unanswered questions that you guys send in from the audience will forward on afterwards via email. So look at the bottom. There's a Q&A tool. Toss in your questions there, and hopefully Joey and I can answer them at the end of this. And I'm looking forward to an exciting webinar here. So I'm going to hand it over to Joey for some opening remarks, and off to you, Joey.
Well, thank you, WeWork, for hosting Coronet Global Philippines chapter. We appreciate your support and partnership, and we look forward to having more of this. A warm virtual welcome to everyone taking the time to join this webinar on business continuity planning and flexibility. We all know the situation now around the globe because of COVID-19, and I hope everyone is keeping well. The Philippines chapter will be preparing more webinars and activities, and further announcements from your chapter leaders will be made shortly. So, Paul, let's move ahead.
Sure, let's kick it off. So we'll run through a few questions here that we've prepared for each other, and then, like I said, at the end we'll open it up to the audience here. So Joey, at WeWork, flexibility is at the forefront of what we do. We believe it's what the future of work looks like. With the current situation in mind, why do companies need to reevaluate flexible working policies in their organization?
So I think today is very different from where we were 10, 15 years ago in terms of the IT and infrastructure support. Mobile platforms from a technology standpoint, enabling use of laptops and mobile phones have improved a lot. The workforce can now be productive even outside of the physical office space any time of the day, so that's a big change.
Nice, and I couldn't agree more. So I saw this stat the other day that 46% of business emails are now answered on a mobile device, which I thought was number one, an insane stat, and number two, a huge indicator of the way that things are moving. The future of work is looks like it needs to be flexible and on the go. We're already seeing the largest multinationals in the world adopting more of a hot desk situation inside of their office, which kind of encourages a co-working or at least some collaboration between the teams inside of their headquarters. I think that trend's only going to continue going forward, which kind of ability look like to you?
So flexibility for me is being able to be agile, to shift to new ways of working on demand, and be able to meet the old norm for the new normal. This means for the workforce, it's a change of adding, to the existing policies of how they work. This means for the physical space, it's the ability to increase or decrease the office space, and also to be able to use a specific type of workplace in the office, depending on your needs, whether it's a big meeting, a group huddle, or a private office. So flexibility can also apply to our HR or training managers who are now probably thinking how to do remote training or seminars, um, or online or blended, and see if it works. And really, now is the time to test that because of the current situation of this quarantine period.
Yeah, and I totally second that. Right, I think your point about finding new ways of working is very interesting because at the moment where I think the world's trying to find it and they're trying to find what that new normal is, and so I think companies are kind of in wait to see, and kind of adapt as we go, and wait until the dust settles to see what changes are actually going to need to be done. Where I really see the major changes coming, especially in the immediate, is going to be around the flexibility of the physical space. That's going to be, like you said, that's length of lease terms. That's the availability to increase, decrease your space, more so at a moment's notice, depending on what's happening in the business environment. And with that, companies are going to need to adopt a different way of working, a different working style. We are already seeing the use or a lot of the use of core and flex models in our business. In which a company might have 75% of their portfolio inside of their traditional working space, but then having different entities in their space like the fast moving components or either the sales group or and they'll put that in more of a flex space. So then if that business entity changes, then they can really grow or they can expand, they can decrease if need be, and do it very, very quickly. So you've been in the industry for a long time. I wanted to see how you have seen flexible workspace trends change over time. From when you started the industry to up until now. Give us a little bit of insight to what it is you've seen over the years, and what do you think's coming now?
It's a great question, Paul. You gave away my age, but during the late '90s up to the latter part of 2000, The byword was business center space, and virtual addresses. The acceptance was more from startup companies and corporates looking for short-term use, particularly for meetings and seminars, and for startup companies who want to do person offices. Just around 5 years ago, co-working has come up where the additional emphasis was really sharing flexible workspaces, but also the use of all these uh, permanent strategies for occupiers who want long-term space but more flexibility in terms of reducing or adding space with less capital investment. I think the next trend coming, again because of the current situation, will be looking into how the home workplace can be used, because this is what we're dealing um, with today, where most companies did not really prepare and not being able to access their traditional office space, and everyone right now is working remotely. But what about you, Paul? What have you observed?
I've seen this in two different parts, right? I saw it when I was working in commercial real estate in the U.S., and then once I moved over to Myanmar to work in more of emerging markets, I saw it again, right? So at the beginning, it was like you stated, very plain, serviced offices. They didn't have much life. They were kind of gray. They didn't have a lot of amenities. It was purely you go in, you've got an address. You might even just have your mailbox there, like you said. And now I saw the transformation started in the U.S. when I left, and now, I mean, all over Southeast Asia, you've got these extremely beautiful workplaces. They're attracting all different types of business. It's not just the like you said, the startups, or I saw it a lot with multinational corporations looking to do more market entry. So they'd come in, they want to mitigate the risk, figure out how they can really attack the market. And at first they did that by going into a serviced office. And now I see the change really where those, we're seeing some of the largest companies in the world now, like with the likes of Amazon. We're seeing it with large international banks. We're seeing them all add a little bit of flex space to the portfolio, which is so much different to the model that it was 10 years ago. And it's really, really interesting to see. And like you said, where the change is going to go towards working from home model as well, and I think the IT focus around that's going to be huge. So your point, I think your point is dead on. There's going to be IT factors, there's going to be security factors with the new working styles, and it's going to be exciting to see where this working culture goes in the future. So with that, it's great to see how the flex space and co-working and serviced office model has changed over the years. Obviously, kind of the big thing right now is COVID-19. I think the world is talking about it, and everyone's trying to figure out what to do. So with that, how do you feel COVID-19 has affected this future planning and the traditional office in general?
So I think the internal corporate real estate teams are going to see more involvement and budget allocations go to the CIO officers and the CHROs, chief HR officers. The underlying question will be how important is the physical office space in the future? Again, paying more attention to how IT can support remote workers outside of the office space. I mean, this is definitely going to require additional budget and raises focus on remote IT support, cybersecurity, the public cloud, mobile communications, and infrastructure. The HR teams, as I said earlier, will also have to figure out how they can deliver virtual training online for offsite collaboration tools. The team should be knowledgeable in terms of how they can use, say, Slack or Microsoft Teams, how it integrates to all the Office applications we use daily. So there'll be a serious focus, as we both agree, on support for working from home, from an IT, hardware, bandwidth, and infrastructure standpoint, and even communicating with your coworkers. I mean, this is something different. Like how we physically do lunch and coffee breaks. I mean, how do you do that virtually? Social after a days of work with conference calls with clients, right? I mean, that factor should still be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a huge thing, right? You've got on one side, how do you do the how do you catch up with your colleagues? How do you have a coffee break? How do you how do you go grab a beer after work with your colleagues on Thursday night or Friday night? It's all changing, right? And I think you're right. There's a lot of training is going to be have to be done to do this. I think also on the physical side of this, you've got every company in the world, number one, trying to figure out how to prepare themselves for the potential of this or a situation like this ever happening again, and how to, number one, how to mitigate that risk. I think what they're going to be doing is, like you said, they're going to kind of realize how much time will or do some components of traditional office workers need to spend that time in the office compared to whether they can have a hot desk or they can work from home, and then all of the side things that go along with that, like the HR, like the cybersecurity, like the IT, like the training, and that's where I see the co-working could be fairly beneficial to this model after the, like I said, the dust settles. I think the big thing is companies are going to be trying to conserve some money. They're going to be trying to save some capital, and with that, they don't really. Most likely are not going to want to expand or spend any money on a new capital expenditure to do their fit out. So the models of the WeWorks and in our competitors, where they're giving custom spaces without having to spend that capex in a little bit more flexible terms, I think the heads of real estate are really going to be looking at this fairly strongly and see how can they collaborate. Of course, I think there's always going to be a need for a headquarters, but I think we're going to just see it change slightly. And then on the other side of that, not the heads of real estate, but what about the occupiers? How are you seeing occupiers view commercial real estate?
Well, first I'd like to encourage our attendees to just go online and then check out the comments out there of these companies that are actually in this situation right now, to get a feel of how they're handling working from home and collaborating with your teams. But I think there's a lot of knowledge out there in the web, so that's why I wanted to mention that to all the folks that attended our webinar. But I think more companies, they're going to reevaluate all these office space commitments. They're going to ask themselves, why would they sign a 5-year lease, not a 1-year lease? Why they shouldn't have more flexible pre-termination provisions? Why pay for fit outs, and why not start asking for tenant improvement allowances? Why a single site versus a multiple site, closer to their employees, spread out? Why go to the office space for 5 straight working days and not every other day? Our current situation, right, is the real case study how working from home or the remote workforces can function and deliver the same results, against the traditional way, being in permanent office spaces as we know it. So I think that is really the big case study that's going to happen here. The remote workforce delivering the same results, although different, working from home.
Yeah, I think case study is a key word there, right? I think we're right in the middle of a very large one to see how things change. My kind of viewpoint is that I think this is going to be very market dependent once it's all over, and I think it really depends on how long this lasts for certain markets and the buoyancy of the markets. I mean, even in the strongest markets in the world, you're seeing tenants already looking for like you said, shorter lease terms, different, more options around, termination clauses, the ability to work remotely, and how that affects, how much they're using the traditional space. And I also think they're not going to be holding as much traditional space going forward. So we'll see. Like I said, it's a big case study, and I don't know if you have any other feelings on that, but it'll be interesting to see how this pans out in 6 months to a year or longer.
Yep.
So around this COVID situation, and just in general. So I know you've been through a few of these situations, albeit different scenarios or different situations that have happened around the world. We've been hearing a lot about BCP models, or business continuity plans. What does that mean to you? And do you have any examples of what different BCP models you might be seeing now, or what you could have seen in the past?
Yeah. So BCP, or disaster recovery planning, is a process of being able to account for business disruption due to several factors, and being able to mitigate the disruption in the business. And part of this is answering the question whether staying in your current office space remains suitable or not. Factors of disruption can be caused by these natural disasters like fire, flooding, power interruption, volcanic eruption, earthquakes. It can also be a similar situation where we are in today, like what happened in 2002 when SARS first appeared in China. It can also be brought about by technology like the bug, if you remember the Y2K situation back in year 2000. Disruptions can also occur if financial systems falter, like in the Asian financial crisis during 1997, the global financial crisis of 2007, 2008. There was really no harm on the physical space during that times, but it was just that companies can no longer afford, keeping those office spaces. COVID-19 today, which is a pandemic crisis, brings a new spin to that problem, where our workforce cannot access the office space itself, thereby disrupting the usual day-to-day flow of our business, and people are also dying, being infected with a virus. So during this COVID-19 period, I'm pretty sure that companies are already integrating this situation in their BCP plans. This will heavily involve a robust IT and telecommunications infrastructure, to support what we've been talking about, which is the remote workforce. This is going to be an ongoing case study because we're all experiencing, again, remote working, and everyone is seeing the advantages and challenges, right? So I cannot overemphasize that the remote workforce in itself is the case study.
Yeah, and so it's super interesting to hear the different scenarios that you've been through, and how this one kind of links up to it as well. I mean, for me on this, we've seen quite a few different scenarios around this. I think the biggest thing at the beginning was that a lot of the occupiers didn't necessarily. They knew they had to do something. Whether it be forced by a government policy or just for the general well-being of their staff. And so I think the biggest thing is
is first, what do they do? So they reach out to experts like yourself. They reach out to the brokerage firms, see what options there are. So we've seen a lot of inquiries about what are our options. How can you help? In a few of the the cases that we've been seeing, actually, where we've been able to help in these BCP scenarios is especially in like the AB split workforce, where they're splitting their teams into totally separate locations. A big thing that's been great for us is that we have it's called headquarters by we, where you can give, and other companies have this as well, but you can give a private space. So it's not necessarily directly in a co-working center. It's just a pure custom-made private office floor with your own entrance, but then you have the increased security measures and cleaning measures of. So that's what we've been seeing on our side, and but it'll be, like I said, it'll be interesting to see how more and more of these pan out in the region, and as well in the Philippines. So I wanted to kind of bring this back into specifically for the Philippines, especially in the Manila market. How have corporate real estate heads reacted to flexible workspace offerings in general, and how do you think that this will change in the new normal that's upcoming?
There has been a wide acceptance in using co-working spaces on a bigger scale. Before, the use was an average of about 20-50 seats. I remember doing 100 seats in early 2000. That was a big deal for Regis. Now, a lot of the companies can do 400-500 seats, for short-term leases of 10 to 12 months. So, that's a big jump in a decade. Co-working spaces will have, to come up with a new meaning on the word flexibility. Again, putting in the COVID-19 situation, and it would all depend on what the corporate occupiers are thinking in terms of flexibility, and can co-working spaces accept this and still be financially viable. The traditionals are probably also thinking how they can be more flexible in the typical leasing deals we've been doing with them.
Yeah, for us, so the Philippines has been a super interesting market for us. Like as you mentioned before, it kind of started out with lower requests, but so since we entered the market, we've been seeing a huge amount of very large scale inquiries. Originally, I think the majority of the inquiries that we get are around the 200 seat mark. But to give you an example, we opened 3 buildings at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and we filled up one of them in 2 deals. They're both over 400 seat deals, very traditional multinational companies. So we're seeing it's been, the pickup in the Philippines has been amazing, and hopefully we continue to see that. I think looking at your market, it's the demands are all there, right? You've got a low vacancy, you've got a lot of fast moving companies who are growing extremely quickly, and that kind of fits that flexibility model. I think you're going to see the traditional people also, because of this situation, kind of mold and bend into that. So with that, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, no, I think we have a lot of questions being fielded by the audience, and let's get going and try to address them.
Sure. Let me take a look here and see what we have. Okay, so this one's for you, Joey, if you don't mind. So what percentage of your clients have started looking at renegotiating rent with your landlords, or some sort of plan during this period?
Well, over the past 2 weeks, there's been clients that have actually approached us, or have instigated themselves to approach the landlord. And I think It's very dependent on the industry where these types of clients are. Obviously, all the airline companies have went to landlords and tried to get some concessions, whether that's rent abatement or rent deferment or discounts. Honestly, um, I feel that most of these clients are gonna really ask for this. The current situation of not being able to use the physical space. Percentage, I think I can only say that there are some, right now that are, as I've said, initiating this. Some of the smarter clients that have been in the market, say for the last 25, 30 years, because of the fact that they're planning to be here again for another 20, 30 years, and they want to make sure that they have a good, relationship with their landlords and not just abruptly, barge in the door and because of the situation, um, ask for a rent abatement. I mean, there's some very sensitive intricacies how this should be done, right? So for those conscious occupiers,
As you mentioned before, kind of
all
started
of
out
this
as
together, the landlords, the
with
service providers, the
lower
occupiers.
requests, but
So
so
it has
since
to
we
be
entered.
not just financial sense, but everyone has to to come out happy, right? Everyone has to win. But unfortunately, with the current situation, right, everyone is affected.
Yeah, and I agree with that statement. I think firstly you've got some government agencies providing relief on this, which is then passed down to tenants. But if in a situation where it's not, like you said, everyone's affected in this, right? And it's not like the landlords, the people building the buildings still have to pay back loans. So it's a trickle on effect to everything. I think everyone's just working on finding the best case scenario for all different players in that, whether it's the landlord or whether it's the tenant. So it's been I think that's an interesting thing kind of around the world of what's happening and how different countries and different landlords are handling it. So the next one is around social distancing measures. So social distancing measures in office spaces will be the new norm for the next few months. What are the short, medium, and long-term plans commercial real estate should focus on to support this? I'm happy to take this for, and then you can jump on if you would like. So with that, I think everyone needs to be prepared for this in the next few months. If the social distancing measures, once things loosen up in these countries, they will be back in place. It'll be smaller groups. I think we need to, in the short term, be prepared to do that and make sure that all offices are meeting those requirements, and that can be done fairly simply. But that won't be the norm, and once this all calms down and kind of clears up, I think it will go back to the way it used to be. Most multinational corporations do have density levels that they'd like to uphold to. I think where you may see a little bit of change is from the kind of the fast moving high growth companies where the density levels are quite a bit lower. There may be some changes in that, but I think the biggest thing is being prepared for what's going to be implemented in the short term, and then things will I think normalize a little bit and go back to the where they were with more of a focus on changing the total portfolio and not just doing distancing measures inside the office.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just wanted to add, Paul, that the social distancing measures in office space. If you were the corporate real estate manager of that space, you're probably what you've mentioned, the density of the office space against the seat being utilized, right? So if traditional companies look at 10 square meters per person or 7 square meters per person now, and then all these IT BPO companies in the Philippines use, say, 5 square meters per person, just imagine the impact of that cost, right? It's a multiplier of two, because there's a wide space between you and your neighbor. So the seat cost is actually increased 100%, right? You can look at it like that because there's half of the population of your floor now, so your seat cost just doubled up.
Yeah, I mean that's catastrophic to a business, right? I mean that's the difference between, okay, this is a viable business, and now we've just doubled our real estate across the world. Doesn't make sense anymore. So that'll be a challenge that certain industries are going to have to deal with. But like I said, I think the big thing is that it's in the short term, there may be some things put in place, but I think in the long run, there will still be the normal density measures that we've always had. Joey, this one is, let me find this one for you.
Well, Paul, before we proceed, I'd just like to thank everyone for again joining in. I think we have a pretty good crowd listening in. So again, appreciate you guys taking the time attending this webinar with us.
Yeah, guys. Actually, it looks like we've ran over time a little bit. Thank you all. Thank you, Joey and Cornet. Like I said, I really appreciate your time today as well, and all the listeners out there. We appreciate it. I hope everyone is staying safe at home and isn't going too crazy during the lockdown periods. With that, we can.
I think, Paul, we can. I guess we can, because we have a very interested audience. Maybe we can answer a few more questions, right? We have a few minutes.
Sure. Let me take a look and find us a good one. Sure. So Joey, this one's for you. How much business do you think there'll be transitioned from the traditional office to flexible office?
I think that's a good question. If I look at, I think I touched on it early on, where during the 90s, the business center space was just really there for startups. And then if you needed to do meetings or events, you go to, business center. But what I've seen over the last, 5-7 years is, flexible office spaces has been part of the strategy for clients. And I think this is true because, especially for the Philippine market, where, these IT companies, these BPO companies secure short-term contracts as well. It's not like a 2-year contract or a 5-year contract. Some of our clients actually sign up contracts, say, for just 6 months. So if you have those types of clients and the program ends after 6 months, I don't think the traditional landlords can allow you to sign a lease even for like 1 year. So the go-to landlord is really the flexible workspaces like co-working. And that's been the strategy. And I think both traditional office space and flexible office space is going to move with this, market in parallel. If you want flexibility, then go to flex space. If you think long term, there's no movement in terms of the space requirement, and this is probably easier for traditional companies, then you go with a traditional office space. But what I like about what I've seen over the last 25 years is, the way we work and also the space in itself keeps changing and it's getting better. And I think technology is supporting that. That's why I say that the next workspace is the home workspace.
Yeah, I agree. I think you will see a lot more of that going on. And that question also kind of leads into someone else's question here. So they asked, are there any new flexible schemes WeWork can offer during this tough period for new clients and existing tenants? I think with this, there's several different scenarios, and it really depends on what your company is going through. There's short-term, medium-term scenarios where if you were looking at possibly changing offices, and you need to get out of your existing space, or you need time between a fit out, you can use WeWork as a swing space. If now you no longer have the money for a fit out, so that the capex for a fit out, I think, we've got multiple models around this, whether it's a WeWork large office inside of one of our physical centers, or if it's a headquarters by we model where it's your dedicated space, it's traditional office space. We have it pre-fitted out to a certain standard, and then it can customize it based on that. I think with the during the current time, like we mentioned during the talk, you've got the situations where you may be splitting teams, or you need to hit certain density ratios based on government standards, and then again you can use that by splitting your staff and going into more of a flexible workspace like we have. And enjoy, like you said, all of this, whether it's traditional space or WeWork large office, or taking a standard space inside of one of our locations. All the terms are very, very flexible. They're all very tenant friendly, and that's, I think, exactly what the world and Southeast Asia and the Philippines is seeing at this moment.
So I think, Paul, we can close, and before you do that, again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining this webinar. I hope you guys found it very interesting and educational. Thank you, WeWork, for hosting CoreNet Philippines chapter, and looking forward to working with you again in the near future.
Of course. Thank you, guys. We really, really appreciate it. And again, Joy, like I said, really appreciate your time. Hope everyone's staying safe and stay healthy.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thanks, guys.